Well, fancy that. You just can't make this stuff up, can you? Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening. And here is an article from the Telegraph. Lockdown and social distancing could make our immune systems weaker, say scientists. Well, I never. Prolonged periods of lockdown cocooning the public from germs could leave people dangerously vulnerable to new viruses, a leading epidemiologist has warned. Sunetra Gupta, Professor of Theoretical Epidemiology at the University of Oxford, fears intense social distancing could actually weaken immune systems because people are not exposed to germs and so do not develop defences that could protect them against future outbreaks. The scientist rose to prominence in March after her team's modelling created the best-case scenario where CV arrived in the UK in December and spread quickly through the population, creating herd immunity, already partly acquired through exposure to different strains of the virus. Her research rivaled that of Professor Neil Ferguson, the Imperial College London professor, whose worst-case scenario of 500,000 UK deaths encouraged the government into lockdown. And of course we found out that was completely false. Prof. Gupta told the Telegraph that while it was unlikely the 3 months of lockdown had compromised our immune system, there remained a possibility that it had an impact. This is a warning to not assume that the situation where we don't suffer regular assaults by pathogens puts us in a better position, she said. If we return to the point where we have no exposure, where we keep everything out and return to a state of existing as relatively isolated communities, we are like clumps of trees waiting to be set ablaze. That's how things were in the age of outbreaks. She said the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak, which led to at least 50 million deaths, was such a shocker because so many of those people who perished were fit, healthy people under 40. That's because in 1918 there had been no flu at all around in Europe for 30 years, she said. We weren't globally connected then as we are now. Effectively, we used to live in a state largely similar to lockdown 100 years ago, which created the conditions for the Spanish flu to come and kill 50 million people. She explains how the fate of any virus and our reaction to it depends on previous exposure to other strains of that pathogen. She claimed lessons can be learned also from European New World explorers who triggered a virgin soil epidemic when they landed among people who had had no previous contact with viruses both common and relatively harmless in the West. The kind of immunity that protects you against very severe symptoms and death can be acquired by exposure to related pathogens rather than the virus itself, she said, explaining how there have been numerous strains of CV. We do know populations were decimated in the New World with the introduction of pathogens. It can lead to very severe consequences at a population level, having very little immunity from lack of exposure. Prof. Gupta is convinced international travel helps build up defences against emerging viruses, so the positives of easing restrictions outweigh the negatives. Britons have been on the move again recently, as the graph below shows. She said the conditions for the spread of a virus have been enhanced by current practices of global mixing with worldwide travel. But what has also been strengthened is the level of cross-protection we gain from exposure to different bugs. Overall, we are in a better place with all this international travel, so the conditions where a pathogen might kill a lot of people has been reduced. She said she expects a resurgence of CV in the winter months, but eventually the virus will end up like flu, a pathogen the public learns to live with and which claims a number of lives of vulnerable people each year. And that's exactly correct. We will get herd immunity, and this will come and go every year, and it'll fall into the thousands of other coronaviruses and flu outbreaks that we have every single year, which sadly take 1.5 million people every year, regardless of what we do. And I think what we've done this time is going to show that we might as well have just done nothing and just gone around our business as if it was a regular flu, just like we have done for every single year since 1918. I mean, I don't ever remember having to mask up for a flu or a cold. We just accepted that as part of the world in which we reside. So take that for what it's worth, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below, and in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. Take care now. Bye-bye.